All right, everybody. So, we are going to talk about a new concept today. So, at this point in the semester, we've talked about a lot of ways that you can do effects. We've talked about keyframing and applying property, uh, transform properties and applying effects and different techniques like, using 3D and motion tracking and all that good stuff, right? Today, we're actually going to kind of go in a little bit of a different direction. We're actually going to learn how we can use programming. In this particular case, we are going to talk about JavaScript to apply effects. Okay. So, actually, in a lot of more, not in this program per se, but when you see a lot of special effects that are done in movies, sometimes those aren't done, aren't animated by hand, but instead there's like an algorithm that if you program it, it's like, okay, rather than having to, animate a snowstorm by hand, it's like, okay, well, I can program what's called a particle effect, where it's like, okay, here is one snowflake, I can write a script to make a bunch of snowflakes move as a group. And so, I mean, the use of programming in, uh, 3D animation or, special effects has been going on for many, many years. We're going to talk about it in its use of After Effects and something called an expression, and that we can use programming to as another alternative to keyframing something by hand. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about expressions. What is an expression? So expressions are what we call or uses a programming language called JavaScript, which is a programming language originally developed for browsers, but is now being used in other areas, and creating algorithms that allow you to animate or create keyframes based off properties of other layers. Expressions can be used, like I said, something to be, instead of, they're usually used in very complex situations where, like, maybe you're trying to generate like a snowstorm or rain or, something along those lines. We're not going to get that deep in this particular class. This is just kind of the basics, but if someone who's more on the programming side or you wanted to work with someone who's a programmer, you could definitely do a lot more complex things here. All right, so I'm gonna go to After Effects. So obviously make sure you download the files for today. Did I download them? I did. All right. All right, this is exercise uno one. And what I want to do is we are gonna look at expressions. I'm gonna open up position. Is it position? It's been so long. Let me see what I'm gonna do here. I guess we're doing it. Well, we'll do rotation. Okay. So there's a couple ways I could do this. I could go to layer and then where is it? Sorry, there's like a couple ways to do this. Oh, animation. Okay, so it's like animation, dippity dabbity doom, keyframe assistant. Yeah, okay, there it is. All right, let me explain what I did here. I opened up the transform properties. These, I'm assuming at this point, you know what the transform properties are. Select the transform property that you want to affect. I'm going to do rotation here. And you can go under animation, so make sure it's highlighted. And I'm going to go to where it says add expression. And when you do that, you're going to see this little thing pop up here. Okay. And this is JavaScript code. And what's going on here is you'll notice that the numbers have turned red. Now remember, these numbers for rotation are normally I can click here and set it like that, right? But what I could do is write code, in this case JavaScript, to affect my item. Okay. Now, notice how like if you remember, every layer has a transform property or has a transform set of properties, right? Like position and scale and all that good stuff. And then I have rotation. So you might notice here, see how it says like transform dot rotation. So it's like, I don't want to get too deep into the programming of it because this is not really a programming class, but hopefully you're understanding that what we're really doing here is we're saying, okay, take the transform property and let's specify rotation. And what I'm going to do here is literally give it a value using code as opposed to me using this. So I'm going to say, okay. Now I did a couple things here. This is what we refer to as a property. I'm setting that property, this is a little bit like basic math, where it's like, okay, I'm setting this equal to something. And then this is what we call in programming the value. All right. So what I'm saying here roughly as code is take the transform section, find rotation, make that equal to 45. Notice that I put a semicolon at the end. Semicolons in specifically JavaScript, but in a lot of programming languages, is like sort of like a period at the end of a sentence. Okay. If you don't put a semicolon, the code still kind of, it's sort of like a run-on code sentences. So I have to, if I'm going to have multiple expressions here, it's good to do that. And so when I do that, you can see it rotates. I'm going to get rid of this. Another way you can do this without selecting the property like this and going under animation and add expression is you can option click on this, I think. Or is it actually on? Maybe it's control click. I thought it was option click. Yeah, okay. Maybe they've changed it. It used to be option click. Okay, now it's like shift option. Oh, okay, sorry. All right. I forgot how you do it. You actually hit option and then click on the little the what do you call it? The stopwatch there. There you go. And that opens that up. So either way works. So this is becomes, like I said, it's like a math formula. And it's like, all right, I want to take the rotation of this layer and let's set it to, I don't know, 9. Well, you won't tell if it's can't really tell because it's a square. But if I let's do like 31, which would be like 31 degrees, and then I rotate it 31 degrees. Okay. And that's kind of the basics there. So I can apply, that's how you can apply a basic expression. I'm going to do a couple more here. So let's go back to exercise one. And let's apply a couple other transform properties. I'm going to select opacity, which I did by hitting T. I'm going to select opacity. I'm going to hit option and click on the little stopwatch there. And you'll notice I get transform dot opacity. So in the same way, it's like I had transform dot rotation, I have transform dot opacity. And this is kind of the same thing where it's like, okay, instead of setting my opacity from 0 to 100 using here, I can say, okay, transform dot opacity equals 50. And when I click off of this, you can see that it's gone to 50%. Okay. Maybe I want to play around with position. Okay. I'm going to option click here and it says transform dot position. Now, remember position, at least if it's in 2D, takes two values. Before I had one value. It was like, the percentage of the opacity or the percentage of the rotation. Here it's like I'm actually going to have to state the X and Y value. To do that in programming, specifically JavaScript, you would set your value inside of brackets like this. So what I'm going to do is put the X value and then the Y value. Okay. And then put the semicolon after this. Okay. This is what we call a value pair in programming. So I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna say equals, oh, I don't know, 100, 100. Okay, meaning 100 pixels from the left and 100 pixels from the top. And when I click off, you can see it moves it. If I put higher in the X value, you can see it moves it over. If I do higher in the Y value, you can see it moves it down, just like it would if I had typed this out directly. Same with scale. In this case, the scale is not the numbers are not the position, but rather the percentage of the scale. So I'm going to option click here. And once again, it says transform.scale. I have to give two values, the percentage in the X direction and the percentage in the Y direction. So if I were to say something like this, maybe 200 in the X direction and 100 in the Y direction, once again, putting the semicolon, you can see it scales it. Okay. All right. So that's just applying some very basic code. Um, I want you to try that out. Just to get comfortable, open up, select the property. You can go to animation, add keyframe, or, option click. By the way, if you want to remove a key or expression after you've built it, you can literally just kind of option click again to remove it, or go to animation with the thing, the property highlighted. I could go to animation, remove expression. Okay. So try that out. That's exercise one. This is just a kind of set a foundation. And then the next exercise, we're going to talk about how to use expressions to affect other layers. Okay.